Hello everyone, and thank you for tuning in into this conversation about our upcoming concert. My name is Alexandrina Boyanova, and I'm a violinist and a new executive board member of Bulgarian Concert Evenings in New York. And I'm joined in this conversation by my wonderful colleague and dual partner, Peter Fancovic.
Hello.
So we'd like to, in this conversation, we'd like to give you some more background about our upcoming concert, which is titled Tribute to Vasco Abadjiev. For those of you who may not know the name of Vasco Abadjiev, he was a 20th century wonderful violin prodigy and a virtuoso. He was born in 1926 and lived until 1978. He was born into a musical family. His mother was a pianist and his father was a violinist and a teacher. And so Vasco Abadjiev started playing at a very young age and just showed such an immense promise that he went on to study in Belgium as well as Germany, and he won top prizes at important competitions, and he really made a wonderful and memorable impression onto the top names in the violin and music world in general at the time, basically in the 1930s. So while Vasco Abadjiev was studying violin, he also studied composition, especially in Germany. Vasco Abadjiev reportedly wrote more than 60 works, of which we only have a few surviving nowadays. And tonight's program makes up these works that are for violin and piano. So now I'd like to pass it on to Peter, and I'd like to have your thoughts on what struck you when you were first reading and learning Vasco Abadjiev's Chaconne for solo piano. What made an impression on you?
Yes, I thought that he maybe got inspired a little bit by Beethoven, simply because that's what I had in my ears. Beethoven's variation in C minor that somewhat sound a little similar in the same chord progression, but of course it's completely different piece. But I played this years ago, and so I heard certain patterns. Chaconne is a Baroque style piece, so it's a set of variations based on combination of chords and a repeating bass line that then on top of that Vasco Abadjiev makes differentiated patterns in the rhythm, in faster notes figures, and eventually puts up challenges for the performer, and from slow variation it kind of intensifies and becomes more dramatic, and then there's a big ending to this. It even gets virtuosic and almost romantic big sound towards the end. So I think it's an exciting piece, and very much enjoyed this process of playing it.
And we hope that you enjoyed listening to it. Bear in mind, this piece was written in the 1940s, so it's not what you would expect to hear from this period. So.
Not at all. In fact, it made me feel like I was playing to something from at least 2 centuries ago or more. So the next piece on the program is Sonata for violin and piano, and I would like to ask you, what did you think when you started to learn it? I'm sure we both have something to say, but
Certainly.
let's start with you.
Yes, well, it's a virtuosic piece for both instruments, I dare say. Violin has some pyrotechnical stuff, and I think also the piano has some very fast,
It does.
hard to catch notes.
Yes.
And but apart from the virtuosity, which is expected from a person or a composer who is also a virtuoso himself, I think that the musical language is much different than what Peter was just describing in the Chaconne. I find that the harmonic language is really paying homage maybe into the Germanic tradition of Wagner and post-romanticism. So there's many cases where you're playing the melody and you think that it's going one way, but then suddenly it makes a quick turn into a very, very surprising land.
Yes, I felt, to me, this piece was combination of something familiar and then surprises in how one chord goes to another that you would not expect. Of course, it happens in other composers, but it was shocking almost to me when we first time started to rehearse, and we had some moments when we smiled because we didn't know where it was going to go. Also, the last movement is unexpectedly short. Usually the last movement of a sonata is the most elaborate, probably the longest, or at least as long as the first one, but this one is this witty, quick march that is over in 2 minutes. So that was interesting to me too. I don't know if you have more to say or...
Yeah, I would just add that maybe we can ascribe the quickness of the last movement to the fact that actually under the whole sonata, at the very last page, we see actually how long it took Vasco Abadjiev to compose this piece, and it was just about a week, and he finished it at 1 a.m.
That's a very specific information.
1 a.m. I believe maybe 1:15 a.m. Very, very specific indication. So maybe that has something to do with it. We're just speculating here. But yes, no, I think that it's a lovely addition to the violin piano repertoire because it is a novel voice. In the middle of the century, you already have many competing currents. Vasco Abadjiev was really following really not necessarily his Bulgarian roots, but mostly his Germanic education in composition.
Yes, I felt the Germanic influence in this piece, especially in the long. I felt it was the longest movement, the slow one. I actually loved that movement a lot. It reminded me some operatic scenes from, like as if it was meant almost for orchestra and opera singer. Just my impression.
Yeah. Definitely, there's a lot of factors. We have to mention that Vasco Abadjiev was very partial to the music of Wagner, and also he really liked the music of his composition teachers in Berlin. So there's even some records of his letters to his teachers that are kept in Germany's libraries.
And the last piece of our program will be a solo violin piece. We will start with solo piano, ended with solo violin, Caprices by Vasco Abadjiev, and I'm sure you have a lot to say about those.
Well, let's just start with again the statement that you would not expect anything less than virtuosic music from a virtuoso such as Vasco Abadjiev. So the 9 Caprices exhibit different techniques and different sometimes funny, again very interesting progressions and double stops that are sometimes finger breaking in order to they're not very comfortable to play.
If I may interject, I know that Caprices by Paganini are one of the most difficult pieces for violin in the literature. Did you find similar technical obstacles? Was it monstrously difficult? Is it all inspired by Paganini or only some of them?
Somewhat. The first 2 Caprices, I would say, I find some bigger or smaller similarity or inspiration from Paganini. The first Caprice of Vasco Abadjiev is set in the same key as the first Caprice of Paganini, E major. And the second Caprice of Vasco Abadjiev uses the same technique that Paganini uses in his second Caprice, which is rapid alternation between 2 strings.
That sounds difficult.
Yes, it's you can get a little bit dizzy. And then another influence, it's curious, I was a friend of mine who is a choral specialist into chorus music actually pointed my attention to the 8th Caprice, which actually indeed takes an inspiration from Rossini's Stabat Mater, which I don't think that it's a piece of music that everybody knows at the tips of their fingers.
Even within the professional musicians, not sure everyone has it in their personal
Yes.
brain library right up.
So it's pretty impressive that, you know, such a piece, like, first of all, that Vasco Abadjiev would be familiar. Of course, you would imagine as a serious compositional student that he would be studying many pieces. So my guess is that this theme really struck a chord with him, and he applied his compositional inspiration down to paper. And this is what the 8 Caprices. It's an elaboration on this theme from the Stabat Mater by Rossini. But overall, I actually have a personal connection with these Caprices because my grandfather purchased the first edition of these 9 Caprices when they were first published in 1956. And so this edition has been in the family library since then. And my father, who was a violinist, practiced and played a number of these Caprices at home and also on stage. And so I grew up listening to some of Vasco Abadjiev's music while growing up, and it was always, there was this aura around his name, that he was this mythical violin virtuoso of the 20th century, and it was just a very unique feeling when it came the turn for me to learn these Caprices, and I was studying from this old edition, yellowed pages, and my father's markings on the page. And while studying the Caprices, of course, my father had made some markings for some probably typos in the music, and going through all the Caprices, it was obvious to me that there should be a newer edition, a cleaner edition, to be used by violinists nowadays, an edition that can be more widely available. So that spearheaded an additional project to create new editions of whatever music we have by Vasco Abadjiev for violin and piano. So in 2019 I was able to meet with Vasco Abadjiev's nephew, and he's the son of Vasco Abadjiev's sister, and they both live in Germany, and they granted, thankfully, the permission to make new editions and publish Vasco Abadjiev's extant works for violin and piano in a new format. So these editions are now available both in print and digitally, and we hope that this performance also serves as an inspiration for those of you who are looking to expand your 20th century repertoire, for those of you who are musicians.
And it's definitely an unusual 20th century repertoire, as we discovered. I personally was left curious and hungry for more after I played his chaconne and violin and piano sonata. And I could imagine this being part of standard repertoire for piano students, concert pianists, violinists. I think this music deserves to be played and has something to say.
Yes, I hold the same opinion. And after all, we hope that you enjoy our performance of Vasco Abadjiev's music. Again, we are thrilled to present it in such a format that will reach actually more people than before. So I guess that's the upside of the pandemic, that we can offer this product, and you can enjoy it from the comfort of your home. And we hope that you will join us this coming Thursday, March 11th at 7 p.m. We will be broadcasting our concert on our channels of Bulgarian Concert Evenings in New York, both on YouTube and Facebook, and you can find the links on our website www.bceny.org. So we hope that you will join us, and that you will enjoy the program.
See you there. Greetings from New York.